So our next reading will be read by Odette Polintan, a story that was written by her daughter when she was very young. I just want to say a few words about Odette. Odette wrote a story called Working the Corridors of Power, but she won't be reading from that story. She'll be reading her daughter's story. Odette was an activist at a very young age in the Philippines at 14, right? And then she immigrated to the United States because her mother said, you better come here now, during the Marcos regime. She is famous for her work as being one of the anchors to the Congressional Task Force, which was based in Washington, D.C., which lobbied Congress to end support for the dictatorship, a very successful lobbying job, along with other comrades in the chapter there. So in 1992, she returned to get her Bachelor of Arts, and then finally got her law degree in 1995. So she's going to read from Sinag's story.
So as a mother and a parent, and being an activist, those are very difficult times because, as I think Romy alluded to, the KDP work was very demanding. We were in meetings all the time. It was really our priority, you know, our life's priority and purpose. And to raise a family at the same time was very challenging. But my hope then was when I was raising my daughter, Silahis, was that she wouldn't rebel and reject my values. But in fact, it was so gratifying when the KDP made the call asking for articles. And I asked her, hey, would you be interested to write an article from the perspective of growing up in the KDP family? She said, sure. But I was scared to ask her, well, what are you going to write? But I was so pleasantly surprised when I read the draft that she was very proud of the KDP, very proud of what I had shared, and also her dad, right? Because Ding at the time was also active in the KDP, and she really internalized those values. So it's entitled Scooby-Doo, Growing Up with the KDP. Scooby-Doo was her favorite cartoon character, so I don't know the connection. Why she said Scooby-Doo. Okay. Nasaan si Mommy? That means, where's my mom? I remember demanding of my dad always, inquiring about my mom's whereabouts. Your mom is at a meeting, he would always reply, meeting, meeting. Such a strange word, yet already part of my 2-year-old vocabulary. She was very verbal, as you can see in her description. I learned that word almost at the same time as I did inom, which is to drink, or matulog, which is to sleep. I would often accompany my parents to these strange gatherings. They, the grown-ups, would assign me tasks to keep my restlessness under some degree of control. At the tender age of 4, I mastered the art of envelope stuffing. This is obviously the time before emails. I would make a game of my task, turning those important leaflets and flyers into paper airplanes. Despite all the chaos I caused at meetings, I actively participated in the events my parents helped organize. I attended everything my parents did. I picketed, we lived in DC at the time, so I picketed in front of the White House, cheered on my Tito John Malagrito as he led many of our rallies, helped at fundraisers, and even sang for President Corazon Aquino when she visited the United States after the fall of Marcos. To me, these things were part of everyday life. Having a child's outlook on my parents' causes, I figured that they were always right. I sensed the seriousness of the battles fought, but never fully grasped their entirety. To me, everything resembled the plot of my Saturday morning cartoon, Scooby-Doo. There was only one conflict, the good guy versus the bad guy. If you were the good guy, which I thought I was, you could do anything you wanted, and the bad guy, for example, Marcos and Ronald Reagan, could do nothing to hurt you. So, acting on instinct, I drew, quote, no Marcos, in quote, and, quote, no Reagan, in quote, signs. I wish I brought those, because I still kept them. I taped them on our doors and picketed by myself on our front lawn. I grew up always voicing my opinions and later continued to act on them. Most parts of radical politics were second nature to me, so you can imagine my surprise when I entered Meeker Junior High in Kent, Washington. We moved back here in Seattle, a suburb of Seattle. People in Kent lived in a suburban bubble. Most of my classmates were like, duh, huh, politics? They seemed so different from me. Their biggest concern the biggest concern many of my friends had was what to wear on Friday nights. Most of them hadn't even thought about the kind of things I had already done. I remember often thinking, thank God I'm not that ignorant. A little arrogant, but anyway, it was very clear because I'll quote in here because there's a paragraph here where she's discussing with her boyfriend at the time, but it's very gratifying to read this part. She says, I had practically dedicated my life to the principles of nonviolence, equality, and civil rights. I fought for peace and justice. I learned that everybody has a struggle, and there are many shades of gray between the black and white I saw innocently as a child. Growing up with the KDP has taught me many lessons I use in life. I have seen the world from many different perspectives. I know about my parents' struggles that opened doors for my generation. By teaching me their beliefs and causes, my parents have given me the best gift possible at 15. I had knowledge and an understanding most of my friends did not. I thank my parents for these experiences and gifts. Unfortunately, she passed 10 years ago in 2008, so.
Thank you, Odette.